Technology has come a very, very long way. And in the case of musical gear, obviously, no exception. Modelers now, compared to the modelers that were available when I was younger, it's not even a fair comparison. So if they've gotten so much better, what is up with the thumbnail, you might be asking? Why is the video titled this? Well, that's because I'm going to make my case for why you should not buy a modeler amp if you are a newer player. The biggest reason why, if you are a newer player, you should avoid these at all costs, in my own opinion, is simple. They're too complicated. When you're learning the guitar, you want to be focused on learning the guitar. You don't want to add another variable of a complete unknown. You probably know nothing about amps at this point. Maybe you've watched a few YouTube demos or something like that and you kind of know what you like, or you looked up what bands that you do like, what kind of gear that they use to give you a baseline. But once you get one of these in your hands, it can get pretty dicey pretty quick if you have no background knowledge of how these things work. And if you're an older person, like my age or older, I'm in my 30s, and you're just picking up, you probably don't have a lot of time to dedicate to really practice like you did when you were younger and learn a new skill. So the last thing you want to do is be spending the majority of your practicing time tinkering with something else that's not actually helping you get any better. But reason number two, it has to do with the actual sound quality itself. Once you do get these dialed in, they are pretty decent. I'd say in a best case scenario, it can get you between 85 to 90% of the way there for the tone, maybe. The Katanas, the Sparks, the Mustang, the Vox versions, the Line 6, it doesn't really matter when you're in the really low end or the entry level ones, which is what I'm primarily focusing on here. Those ones, they sound good enough. And if, like I said, if you're going out and playing a live gig and you don't want to lug around 1,000 pedals or a really heavy amp, I can see them being applied there, really well. And a lot of gigging musicians, that's what they use. But you're never going to see one used in a recording environment, and there's a reason for it. They simply just don't sound as good as the real thing. Now, if you're thinking, well, I'm a beginner, what does that matter? Well, it matters because you're going to eventually want to replace it. It's not going to be your main amp forever. Whereas, say you shell out a little bit more money and you get something like a Pro Junior or a Blues Junior used for like $300 or $400. That amp can stay with you the rest of your life. You will never need to replace a decent quality amp like that. And it's not that much more money because most of these modelers are around $200 to $300. You could spend more if you want to. But a real tube amp, like the ones I mentioned, or even if you wanted something a little bit quieter, like a Vox AC4, that's a very manageable at-home and great sounding amp that you can get for that same price, brand new. You don't have to hunt. And I feel like we're in an iPad generation in a sense that we want to have everything be able to do everything all in once for a perfect solution. And as far as guitar tone goes, there's just unless you're spending a ton of money, you're not going to get it for a low price. Otherwise, none of us would have this super expensive gear, the super nice amp setups, these nice microphones, stuff like that. Because you can get in the ballpark, like I said. But the real thing, it's not going to be done at that price point. Now, the third reason is going to piggyback on the fact that maybe you buy a small tube amp instead. It helps you learn about the guitar that you're using. You'll be able to pick out the strengths, the weaknesses, the flaws. Because if you do have a basic little tube amp that maybe has a volume, a treble, and a bass, and that's pretty much it on it as far as the controls go, you're going to be exposed pretty quickly once you know how to play a few things on how that guitar is going to react. And it'll give you a better idea of what you might actually want or want to improve on your instrument that you already have. Whereas with a modeler, there are so many little patchworks that you can kind of get around things. But again, you're just digging more time into a different piece of gear instead of actually playing. Now, another thing to keep in mind here. Most beginners that pick up the guitar and then they quit within 6 months, they'll say that it's because it was just too complicated, there was too much to learn, or they didn't have the time to put in to do it the right way, so they just went on with a different hobby. If you add in all of these extra variables of the amp on top of the music theory, on top of the actual technique and the muscle memory of learning how to play this, you are just setting yourself for another potential barrier that it's not necessary. But those are the 3 reasons I just would not recommend a beginner get a modeling amp. But that's going to wrap up this video for today. If you found this helpful, please leave me a like, leave me a comment, let me know what you think about this specific use of modeling amps, whether you agree with me or you disagree with me. Subscribe if you haven't already. If not, I will see you tomorrow for another guitar related video. Take care, you guys.